You ever have them projects that you just didn't want to do and you found every excuse under the sun not to do them? Yep. Year and a half later, I'm out of excuses. I'm Rick, and this Shut the heck up, you stinking roosters. Now for your sanity. This is The Shack. Hello and welcome back to The Shack. Yes, this is one of those projects, not that I didn't want to build it, the issue is installation. What I need to do is build a door. I don't have any issues building a door. I have issues hanging the door. I've been shown how. I've tried it a few different times. I just cannot get the shims and everything to work out right where that door sits in there the way it's supposed to. It never does right. So that's where I draw the line. I don't like doors. It is what it is. This is the door that originally came off the access to the water heater. Now you see here the hinges, they were basically gate hinges mounted on the door and unfortunately mounted on the house. And when I redid the siding of the house, redid everything, took all that old crappy siding off and rewrapped it with lathing and the paper and new OSB and then had someone come and stucco it. That wasn't an option any longer. And unfortunately, the original framing didn't allow for a proper opening to mount a door or to install a door. It's just the way they built it then, and it's basically half-assed, kind of crappy. So I have to build my door to the existing rough framing. As untraditional as it may be, that's my only option, because if I was to build a door and put a frame around it and then slide that in, shim it, I'm going to lose a couple inches on either side, and I can't afford that. As it is, the water heater is about 4 inches on either side, so you have enough room to get in, kind of manhandle this thing out to put in a new one. You don't have a lot of room. And if I was to take 2 inches off either side, that even limits that even more, and that's going to make it much more difficult, and a whole lot of words going to come out with that. So I have to build this door to mount to the rough framing, and unfortunately, it's not the best way to do it, but that's the way I'm going to do it so I can open that door all the way and have full access to be able to pull that water heater out. So that's my challenge and why I've been putting it off for so long. But I have to get to it. I got my notes, so let's just dive right in and we're going to start. Like any project, when I start, I kind of hand draw it out, get a rough idea, because I'm a visual person. I need to know what I'm going to try to strive for. Simplicity is best in this case, so I'm just going to have basically a railing style type of a door or tongue and groove and have 3 rails with the 2 side stiles. I'm choosing cheap basic lumber, construction grade 2x8 and 2x6s. So my first stop is down to the lumber yard, pick up 2 pieces of 2x6s, 1 piece 2x8, because I only have 3 rails, 1 piece will be sufficient. So my first step, now that I have my lumber, is starting the milling process, but I got to cut these down to a more manageable size. The stiles, I know the total opening, so I'm going to measure top to bottom. I'm going to add about 1 inch or so on that. Cut the stiles down to that length. I know the opening is like 24, I forget what it was, 24 1/4 or something. So I'm going to cut my rails a little long, because I don't know exactly by the time the milling process is done if I'm going to have a 5.5 inch stile, 5 1/4, or 5 1/8. I don't know. It depends on how the milling process goes, how much I have to take off to get these all nice and squared up. So I'm going to cut my rails for now at 16 inches to start running them through the joiner. We're moving on. Now that I have them down to a more manageable size, it's time to start running them through the joiner to get a nice face and one nice edge. So basically, I'm going to get my rails first. They're smaller. My first step is to run a face of each one through. Take my pencil, I scribe a line, scribble from the top to bottom. Start running that one face through the joiner until that pencil marking is completely gone. I've taken everything off. Now it is true and flat. Now that I have one face done on each piece, I turn my attention to the edge. Same scenario. I set the piece on a flat surface, check the edge, flip it over, check the other edge, and I'm seeing which edge is the flattest. Going to be a little extreme, but if this is the piece of wood, that's going to sit flatter than if I rolled it over and it's like this, it's just going to teeter-totter. It's better to take the piece that's kind of, if it's crowned this way or bows this way, to take this edge, set it down and run it through the joiner, because then you're going to plane both edges down until it becomes flat. Extreme, I know, but I'm trying to explain a point. That's why I do it that way and not that way. So once I know which edge I'm going to joint, again with the pencil, edge to edge, top to bottom, the whole length of the piece, I mark so I know as I run through the joiner, I keep an eye on the pencil mark. When all the pencil mark's gone, then I know I've got a true flat surface again. Now, critical, I keep that jointed face against the fence. So if it's off just a little the edge, as I run it through and keeping this square, it's going to flatten out that bottom edge. So then I'll have a nice 90, so I can put my tool on there, check it, and it's going to be a nice squared edge. So that's the next step. Check every piece, mark my edge, run one edge through the joiner. So we have step 2 done, jointed the face and an edge. We're going to go to step 3. We're going to go to the planer next. Now I'm taking that jointed face, setting it down, taking a pencil, scribbling a line from edge to edge, the full length of the piece, and I'm going to start running it through the planer. Now I put one piece in, crank it down until it catches it, starts pulling it through, and I crank a little bit and I run all pieces through. Now all pieces may not take a little off, but I start there. That's just how I do it, because some pieces when I put in won't even grab to go through because they just have a dip or they're just thinner at that point. Your lumber isn't uniformly the same thickness all the way up and down. I may have pieces that the pencil mark is completely gone, and others I still have a few low spots I'm working on. I keep my jointed face down, run the other one through, they all match now. Now I have to explain something because I did make a mistake and I actually jumped some of my steps by accident. Just a quick recap, because I was looking at these like, you know, this isn't really a step, these are subcategory steps, I guess. So once I get the material, step 1, we're cutting it to a general length, basically a more manageable size. Step 2 is the milling process, which actually has sub-steps. So the first step is jointing a face, picking an edge, and then jointing that edge. Then I go to the planer, put that jointed face down, run all pieces through, run them through till the pencil mark's completely gone and they're all equal thicknesses now. Jointing face A, jointing edge B, running through the planer is C, D is coming to the table saw. I'm going to run the pieces through the table saw. I'm going to square up that last rough edge, but on the rails, we're going to cut them down to the final. So the stiles, I put the jointed edge next to the fence, slide the fence over till the piece of wood just hits the blade, pull it out, go over a 30-second, and I run both pieces through. Now, the one piece may shave a little bit here and there off, the other piece may take a lot off. It doesn't matter, we're going to make them equal. So I run both pieces through at that setting, and I continue to bump it over a 30-second at a time until I have a nice square edge. All pencil marks have been removed from that one edge. Now I know that I have my final dimension lumber. So that is my step 2E. This is where I screwed up. I actually jumped between, I think, step D, and I somehow did the dado in the styles. That's why I'm saying this, so I know I'm gonna get comments. Internet is ruthless. People are very nitpicky, so they want to find anything and everything they can do to disrespect you and comment, say, oh, you screwed up, you did this. I know I screw up. This is why I have paperwork and I write all my things down, and even I still don't follow my step-by-steps. I screw up, I skip one, jump ahead, whatever. My ADD, I can't help it. That's why I have to do this, and I check it off, because if I don't, I will screw up, and I did this time. I screwed up. So that's why when I'm following my steps, you will see that there's maybe a dado or something already cut in these because I screwed up. But this is how I should have went. So now I'll move on basically to my step 3, and that is a couple of sub steps. So my step 3A is actually putting the dado into the styles only for now. This is going to be a 5/8 inch wide dado, 3/4 of an inch deep. So I get my dado stack, get all my blades stacked up together. Not critical, I don't need to shim them to make sure it is a 5/8, because if this is your mark on your material, dead center, 5/16 this side, 5/16 this side equals 5/8 of an inch wide dado. So I move the dado stack till it's in between these marks as close as possible. I run it through, I flip the material, run it through again. So if the dado stack is not dead center, running the material through, flipping it end to end, running it through again, it's going to self-center that dado. So it will be dead center in your material. It's not critical, it doesn't have to be 5/8, because when we start to do the tongue, we're going to shave it down so that fits into the dado. Now I have my dado in the styles. So my next step, which was step B, keeping the dado stack on, and of course I didn't. Took that off, put a single blade on. Again, that's why I have to pay attention, and I have to not just get so involved I jump ahead of myself, because I make mistakes. I should have kept the dado stack on, get my rails, and now I'm going to trim the rails down so the tongue fits into that dado. Same thing, dead center of my material, 5/16 out, 5/16 out. There's my mark, 5/8 of an inch dado. But I'm not going to do the slot, I'm going to trim the edges to bring it down to that. So if I would have had the dado stack on, I could have brought it over, and this is the first mark, could have brought the blade over. I'll do it this way. This is the blade, all the stacks, and this is my mark. I should have brought it over till just outside it. I want a little bit of a gap. Run it through, flip it, and then run the other side through, so I have my mark and it's a little thick. Then I can look at the fit and see how far I have to go. Fortunately, with my Incra, I can do either a 32nd, which would be 1/8 of an inch, and that's probably too much, but I can also do 1/1000th of an inch increments. So at this point, when it's close, I'm going to do 10/1000ths, run my material through, flip it, run it through again, so that's 20/1000ths. If that's the slot, this is my tongue. It doesn't fit, but it's very close. I'm probably going to kick that down to maybe 5/1000ths, and if it's almost fitting, I may just do 2 thousandths, flip it, run it through, that's 4 thousandths, and it should slide in. Now the rails on the door frame, I want a snug fit. I don't want it loose. So that's my next step. This is step B. I'm going to trim my rails for the door frame to fit into the dado of these styles. Now that I have the rails of my doors, the edges trimmed down to fit into the dados of the styles, I'm going to take it out back. I'm going to do a quick assembly, just a dry fitting, make sure everything fits good, and I have a visual so I know I am on the right track. With that, now I can finally start step 4, which is working on the slats for the panel. Haven't talked much about these, but I went back and I picked up 2 2x6x8 of redwood. Brought it home, cut them down to like 15 7/8, 6 equal lengths out of each piece of 2x6. They went through the same process as I was doing the door. Started at the joiner, one face, one edge, to the planer. After I got the door frame planed, everything was at the same thickness. Then I ran these through, but I ran these down to 1 inch. I wanted it thinner than the door frame itself. Brought them over to the table saw, cut them down with the door rails to the final lengths. And then I put them aside because I didn't know the final width until this point. With the door dry fit, dry assembled back there, I can start my measuring, and I get the center rail dead center, so I measure the opening in the top and the bottom. They are equal. Started doing some figuring. What I was coming up with was some really random 16/32 number. I didn't want that. I wanted to get it down to the closest eighth, make it a little easier. So what I ended up having to do, I forget, I trimmed a little bit off the rails, top, middle, and bottom, reassembled it, remeasured it, and I divided it by 6 because that's how many pieces I had of the 2x6 for the top and bottom. And I finally came down to where it measured 4.738 or 6, I forget. Close enough to 4 3/4, works out perfect. The slats will be 4 3/4, but because I'm not just butting them up together, I want them interlocked via a dado and a tongue. So all I need on these, because it's just holding them together, I decided on a 1/2 inch deep, 1/2 inch wide dado and a 1/2 inch tall, 1/2 inch wide tongue. Boom, fit together. That, with those 6 pieces connected together, that is my panel now. So that 4 3/4, my overall width now on these are 5 1/4. Now I can bring those over to the table saw, set it up, bring my fence to 5 1/4 and cut them all down to their final width. That is basically 4A, cutting them down to their final width. Now for B, I start the dados. Now on the door, I was thinking about this and I thought about it, I'm glad I did. If I was to put a dado on the bottom rail, it would sit like this. So outside rain hitting, go down, and it would just puddle in here and would rot and mold the door. I didn't want that. Flipping it over so my bottom rail has a tongue, the first slat of my panel has a dado, it'll cover that. So when it rains, it's just going to run down. It's not going to be able to get in and go up. My dados, I have to do separate. I have to do 2 in the rails and then do the rest on my slats. So I set the table saw up, get my middle rail and my top rail, and I mark on them because I've already marked the front, left, right, front, top, middle, bottom. I look at the front and I write on the edge, on the top, top tongue, on the bottom, bottom dado. Same thing on the top rail. I don't need to worry about the top, nothing's going on there. I just write bottom dado. So I bring those 2 pieces over, put my mark dead center, 1/4 inch on either side. So now I have the mark like this on my wood. My dado stacked like this, bring it over till it looks like eyeballing it dead center, run it through, set it about 1/4 inch, flip it, run it through, and then bring it up till it reaches that 1/2 inch depth. Run it through again, turn it over, run it through. So now that dado is dead centered in my wood. Bring the top over, run that through. Now my rails for the doors are done. Now I turn my attention to the slats for the panels. Same thing, mark the panel, mark the slat on the bottom slat on the panel, dead center, go over quarter. That's my 1/2 inch. My dado stack, bring it over where it's centered over that. It's already at the 1/2 inch depth. I just have to get it close centered, run it through, flip it, run it through, do the remaining slats for the panels. 6 for the bottom, 6 for the top. Once that's done, same process, reverse, if that makes any sense. Bring the bottom rail and the middle rail, not touching the top rail this time of the door frame, bring it over, 1/2 inch dado, still at the proper height now, not depth. Same mark, dead center on my piece of wood, but this time I'm bringing that dado stack till the last blade is about center of the edge of the wood. Run it through both sides, bring the middle one over, not the dado side, but the tongue side, set it down, run it both sides through. And the dado in my panels, I check. If it doesn't fit, I creep up on it until it has that perfect fit. Now the door rails and stiles, I wanted a snug fit. The panels, I want a smooth fit. I want it to slide in smoothly. I don't want it to bind. I want it to be able to move because the panel itself will not be glued, just the doors. But when I put the panel into the door frame, all edges will not be glued. So the panel and the door can contract, expand independently of one another, and there won't be any chances of it binding, cracking, or whatever. That way they both move independent. Now I turn my attention to the panels. Same thing, that little mark, my edge. This time I don't have to put this over on the edge because it's wide enough here, it will overlap because it's only 1 inch. I got a 1/2 inch, so I got a 1/4 inch on the other side. I got a 1/2 inch dado, so I'm fine. So I bring it over close to the edge, run it through, flip it, run it through, check fit, and creep up on that perfect fit. Once it's done, I run the rest of them through. Now, with my dados and my tongues done in the rails and the slats for the panels, I can go out back and we can dry fit this thing together and finally see what this door is going to look like. I am so ecstatic at this point because it came together. It wasn't all messed up. I did have one mistake though. When I initially did my first cut on my rail to fit into the dado, somehow, don't ask me how I did it, I can't even figure out. I was like, how did I do this? I was running the rail through, shaving it off, getting it to the right width, which I got. Then I started raising the blade to get that perfect fit. Somehow I missed something, I don't know what I did, I raised the blade to like an inch. I only needed 3/4 of an inch. I caught it before I cut the rest of them, thank God. Yeah, I decided I'm not going to go through the process of milling just a single piece to get this to fit. I'm not going to deal with it. I will correct it at the end. It's my door, it's not a customer, I'm not going to worry about it. When I get to that point and I assemble the door, that little less than a 1/4 inch gap on either side, I'll just put filler in. I'm not going to worry about it. With that, now that I have it assembled and it looks great, my next step is the funnest, most enjoyable part of all woodworking: sanding. Yeah, I'm being sarcastic. Disassemble it, sand every piece, mainly the front and back. Once that's done, then I can finally assemble this, and I am only assembling the frame, the slats, and the panels themselves. I will not glue, they are free floating. That way this door can contract and expand freely, move within itself without having any binding areas. Sometimes I do make a decent decision, so that I think is a good decision in this case. Get it all glued. Now, even though I gave a thumbs up and everything's good, I started thinking and I realized once you clamp, the wood will naturally have a tendency to start folding in. You're clamping it, it wants to roll in. So I went back, flipped it over, put clamps on the back, so that tendency to start coming in this way, putting clamps on the back will straighten the back out and keep this all nice and true. It won't bow in any direction. It will keep it nice and flat, theoretically. Now once it's dried, I'm glad I did this next step. I wasn't sure, but sometimes the wood won't stay true. It may kind of wave a little bit. So I decided I'm going to put it back on the joiner. I'm going to run an edge through just to see, and I'm glad I did. There is a little gap here and there, so I ran that door through maybe 5 or 6 times, and now I have a nice true edge again. Not that it would have made much difference, but in my world, in my crazy ADD stuff, I have to do things a certain way. So I had to run it through, so now it is nice and true again. So my next step after that, naturally I had to come back to the table saw and run the door through, keeping the freshly jointed edge next to my fence. And I got a nice smooth straight edge, so now both edges are true again. So my next step after that is going back out to the back, getting my Miles Craft track guide, lining it up, using a square, make sure it's square with the edge, and trim the top and bottom, just shaving a little bit off, making sure they're all nice and true. So now I have a good, nice square door once again. So now it's all nice and trued up. It's all nice and glued up, or I should say it's all nice and glued up and trued up. It's glued and trued, not glued and screwed, glued and trued. I'm going to paint the panels first. Then that way I can just tape around the inside of that panel and then paint the door. Just quickly painting the slats, the panels on both sides, and I think I did 3 coats, just light coats. I did 3 of them total. With the door painted and dried now, I could turn my attention to the hinges. Now I have 2 different sizes of jigs from Templaco. That's these. These are for the hinges for your door and frame. Basically, you set this on there, you route out the door, then you nail this to the frame itself and route it out. So everything's situated because it keeps the hinges the same, so everything should line up. I also have a single, this one here, which I'll use as a demonstration, in the same 2 sizes. So how these work, you take this and you set it on your door. This would be the door. You set it on the door. It has 2 stops, and these are adjustable depending on how much of an offset you want on this. So once you set it in, it hits it, you can adjust this to bring it out a little further or all the way in where it's in like this. So you get this adjusted, tighten up your stops, then you would nail this to the door. You have these little pins right here, top and bottom. You got them right there and right here. Same thing on the large jigs. You have 2 pins that nail to the door. You nail these in, and they only stick in maybe 3/8 of an inch, if that. They're very thin, so you just have a little dot when you're done. Not a big thing. It's like a framing nail or anything. They're slender and thin, so they make just a little dot, like a pinhole. Tap those in, nail this to your door, and then you route. Has this opening here, so when you set your router here, the blade sits here, it's not hitting the wood. You turn it on, and you can bring it in and cut into this, go down, and then cut out the remaining excess. And that's it, that simple. Problem was, so I never had the router bit for this. So what I did, because I had nothing else, I went in my little chest here. I got my grandfather's little box of router bits, which very, very few router bits he had. This was basically it. Took out just a flat bit. This is a 1/2 inch bit. Brought my trim router over, loosened the base, got my centering tool, put it in, made sure it was all centered. I didn't want anything to go wrong in case it's been knocked out of center. Tightened everything up, got my guide bushing that this would just slide through. Put the guide bushing in, tighten it up, put this in my router, and then took the base in the router and slid it through and made sure it came through by hand, turned this, made sure it did not hit any side of the guide bushing, so I'm good to go. So now all I had to do is set the depth. So now I can raise it up right there. What I'm doing, the cutting edge of the bit, I'm filling from the plate of the hinge over. It was a little bit proud, now it feels pretty flush. So I'm gonna lock it in right there and I'll see how it works. Now I can nail this to the door and route it, but I gotta test it first. I'm not gonna ruin the door. I wanna make sure everything works, everything fits prior to putting it to the door and routing this and making a mistake. So I used the same size template on the single as I had in the 3 hinge larger template. Nailed this to a 2x4, got my router and cut it out. So let me set this on here again. Make sure my nails are up out of the way. Whoops. Just mount that the best I can. Again, this is just to see if it's going to work or not. Good enough. Put my battery in here and let's just see how this thing does. There we go. That simple, that easy. Let's see if it works or not. Looks pretty flat. I am impressed. I like that. It might just do the trick. Proof is in the pudding. Let's see. Yeah, it's a little bit wide though. Okay. So I have a little bit of play. Again, I don't have the correct bit for it. It's supposed to be a 5/8 bit and I don't have one. Actually, I need to go a little deeper. Yeah, I definitely need to go a little deeper. It was way too big because I don't have the router bit for this. Didn't think of it at the time. I thought of it when I was editing the video. I could have tried, I don't know if it would have worked. I could have tried a larger guide bushing that would offset it instead of being as tight as this and going a little bit wider. It would offset this a little bit. And I could have done that and seen if that would have taken away the slop in my slot. But I didn't. So what I did was, I think it was like 10 plus layers, but I would put tape here, here, and here, because these are the 3 sides that I'm cutting from, not this. When I bring the router in, I am setting against this side, the door setting here, and then I bring it in and start to cut. So I'm only worried about the bottom, the side, and the top here. I would add 3 or 4 layers of tape, do the cut again, still not good enough, add 3 more layers of tape, do it again. 10 to 12 layers, I think it was, I got on here. When I set this on here, I did my cut, and this was the result. I don't know if you got a good view, so I'll put it in here now, see? That's not awful lot of play. Got at least 10 layers, if not more, of tape on here. So as I put layers in here, I just put this in here and got it close. I didn't want to hit, and it's just barely has a little play. Put it on, routed it out, and now that's perfect fit. Compared to this, now, nothing. Now I have my template set up and the distance works. Again, I could have tried larger guide bushings. That might have helped it also, but I didn't think of that. But the problem is now I got to transfer how many layers I did on this to this bigger jig and do it on each one of the 3 openings. Then I can get the door, lay it down on my grid style cutting top that I made for the sawhorses back here. Because I thought about it, I didn't want to set it like this on the ground, straddle it and try to cut it. I thought it'd be easier to lay the door down, nail this to it like this, and put a bar clamp on the front and the back to hold it on the door so there's no way of me using the router, pulling it like this and popping it off out of the nails and having it fall. So it kept it nice and tight. And then got my router and cut the 3 slots on the doors. So what I'm gonna do, we're gonna set this up. I'm gonna flush it to the top. This is the bottom, I'm gonna flush it, but to the top. Nail it on there and I'll just do it from here. And I might put a clamp or 2 to hold it, just make sure it doesn't move on me. Whoops. That's good right there. Aye! Aye! Doggone it! Back in that hole there. Exactly why I wanted to put, that's good there, or I want to put a clamp on it so it doesn't move on me. There's that one. There's that one. Good. So because of that, I think I am going to put the clamps on. Moment of truth. Ooh, that is perfect. Oh my goodness. That is nice. Now I'm going to cut the slot on the frame itself, and that also had some challenges. I'm going to try to explain why I ended up having to do something and having to make a jig to make the door work properly. Now actually, these are the pieces I drilled out of the door for my ventilation, which I'll talk about later in the video. But for now, I'm going to use these as a demonstration. So just imagine this is the hinge. The flat plate area, the barrel area where the pin inserts that holds them all together. Now technically this should be like this. This is the hinge that goes on the frame. The door hinge has the two barrels that insert here. You put the pin into, but I'm just going to hold them like this for now. So if I was to cut out the slot for the hinge, and I put the hinge on the wood and try to tighten it up, okay, it's not going to go flat because this area is stopping it. The barrel is stopping it, the hinge. I have to do something with this area, cut a groove or chisel this area out so this will set into that basically like this. So it's inset. It has to be below the surface. So I was thinking about it, and I kept thinking about it, and I thought, well, I'll mark that out and I'll just chisel it because I need to make this little groove. Or I could try to round something out because I need the groove. And then like a lightning bolt, it hit me, the juice groove. I got the bit for juice grooves for my cutting boards. Duh. So I decided to use that to make the groove for this to recess into, because the groove is kind of like this shape, you know, it goes down because you want the juices to go in that and puddle in there and not all over your counter. So I thought, yeah, that will work. I'm going to do that. But how am I going to do that? So I had to come up with a jig, which is this. So basically what I did, put the juice groove bit into my router, sat the router base on here, and basically what happens is the base sits against here, the router bit goes in here, the juice groove bit, and it's just a little wider than the juice groove bit, because the juice groove, if this was the juice groove bit, there's a bearing on top of here, so the bit's on the bottom. So I don't want the bearing to bind in here. I want it just ever so loose, so I can ride this edge and then go down, ride this edge. So I put the bit in there, kind of put this against it, nailed this down, sat the base on here, saw where the bit ended, marked it, and that's my line there. And I measured the width of the barrels of the hinge with the cap here, and I went 1/8 of an inch more, and that's where I marked that mark. Then I brought my router down here till the bit hit this mark, made a mark there, and I used my square to get squared up, and then again put my bit in here, put it against it, and then just opened it ever so slightly. It doesn't have to be perfect, just so I made sure I had room for this to wiggle in, and then stapled it there. So this is my jig. This section here is the routing section. This is where the routing actually takes place. With my plate routed out here, I marked on there, set this on there, got it within the mark. So I put the hinge on there and marked like outside of the line where the sat it on, and kind of marked here and marked that. So I had an idea of where I want the area to route out. Lined this up, put this screw in, got my level, made sure it was plumb, put this screw in, and then put my router in here, went up this side, over this side, and down, and made sure it was done. Then I took this off, which I could replace easily because I have the 2 screw holes, put my hinge in there, put it against it, and it was still not flush. It was off a little. It was still not setting flush. So I reinstalled this, lowered my bit a little bit, up on one side, down on the other, took this back off, put the hinge in, and now it was sitting flush, and that was sitting in there. Actually, it's up and it had a little gap, which is what I wanted in here. Then I quickly realized I went to take the pin out, but it was inset and it hit like right there. It couldn't go up any further. Like, well, this isn't going to work. So I took the hinge back off and I basically, the two holes that hold this in, I took this screw, slid this up and put it in the hole this screw is in, and then made sure it was plumb, screwed that screw in, and did my juice groove extension up here. Then, again, taking it off, put my hinge on, it was flush. Now, I had room to pull the pin up till it hit this, and it was just barely inside this barrel, which is all I need. But because it's out so far, I could actually pull it a little bit forward and pop it all the way out. I had enough wiggle room up here now I could move it up and get it out. So I had to do that on all three. So I have my depth, and now because I basically doubled the size, I had plenty of room for that pin to slide up and out so I could remove the door from the hinge. So now you know what I did, why I had to do it, and my quick little jig I made. So now I can show you exactly what I did, and now you'll understand. It actually worked. It did have a little issue because the frame stud had kind of twisted a bit. The middle hinge didn't line up perfect, so all I had to do was loosen the screws in it. That way I had the top and the bottom set in, loosen the center, brought it in, put the pin in, and then tighten it back up, and it's fine, it works. I can pretty much finalize the door at this point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint the rest of the door, let it dry, and then I'm going to get my handy little jig here, and I'm going to drill the holes for the doorknob and the latch assembly. Then I'm going to put everything together, reinstall the door, and assemble the doorknob and the latch assembly, mark out where I need to chisel out so that it will sit flush. When that's done, what I do is I put my stop molding on. Basically, when the door and the latch is all done, I close it, it latches, I pull back, so the latch is resting against that striker plate, and then I have tape on about 10 inches from the top and 10 inches up from the bottom. I mark where the door is at, then I can open the door. That's my mark where the door should be closing, and I want it snug against the striker plate when it comes back. Measure in the thickness of the door, which is 1 3/8, and then from that mark go an additional 1/4 of an inch, and that's where I'm going to put my stop molding. Now the reason I do a 1/4 inch, because I'm going to put 3/8 inch thick weather stripping on the top and the striker side, the doorknob side. So when the door closes, it will come in, it'll hit the weather stripping, won't allow it to close. Then I can push it a little bit, and the sponge will naturally want to flex back out of the weather stripping. So it'll push back and keep that door nice and snug, and also allow for a good seal around the door. I didn't put the weather stripping on the hinge side of the door, because basically it's sitting like this, so if it hinges this way. And what was happening was it was kind of just rolling it and flattening it. It wasn't really coming from here like it would be from this side, coming in and closing and resting on it. So it was kind of more of a, I would have to say, like a peeling action. So what I ended up doing was putting some felt on the door itself, so it's on this side, and when it came in, it just collapsed on itself, and it worked out better. It wasn't sticking very well with this weather stripping. It was literally like peeling it off. It wasn't creating a proper seal. So putting the felt on the door as it came in like that actually worked better for me in this instance. So I have my stop molding on, I have my weather stripping on there. So now I'm going to go to the bottom of the door, and I had a couple of options, but they were too thick. I would have actually had to take the door off and cut like almost a ½ inch off that door to allow this to mount on the bottom of it, because the bottom would come in and it was like a sweep and it would seal the bottom. So I had another option, which I'll insert the video, worked out better. So basically made my mark on my door, and I went down about 3/16, a little over an 1/8 inch. That way the rubber piece, when I close it, will flex and have a better seal on the bottom. It really would create a good seal down here, as you'll see when I shut the door. So that worked out well. Last thing I have to do for code is I have to install my venting. And this is what I was originally going to use, but if this was the distance of my rails on the door, it looked funny because it was bigger than the rail, and I didn't want that. I wanted it to stay within the confines of the stiles here. So they have another option. They're 3-inch diameter single vent holes with louvers on them, and they're round, and I thought that made a better option. But it didn't have screen on the inside, and my thing was being able to keep out bugs and stuff as much as possible. So all I did was, I have extra screen in my shop. I put these 3-inch diameter louvers on there, marked on the screen, cut it out, slid right inside, got a caulking gun, put caulking on my finger because they were like 2 inches deep. Stick my finger in there and just kind of went around the edges to seal the screen within the louvers there. And it worked out great. Plus, I was looking at it, these are much wider space, the little weaving part here of the screen versus the screen for the house. Much more closely woven, so there's less chance of any bugs getting in. So that was, for me, was a win-win. That worked out perfect. Of course, I forgot to film any of that. But this is what the door looks like. It is built, it is in, it is done. All the hardware added, seals are done, venting's done. Yeah, just like that. Big boom, check, done. Yes, very long video, but this isn't a traditional build. This was something very custom, very specific. I could have built a door real simply, put a frame on it, and then went through about 3 days of shimming it, because me and door shims don't work out. I can never get it to hang right. But I needed to keep all that available real estate in the opening to be able to access this water heater to take it out. And taking a couple inches off either side, to me, really wasn't an option. This way, this door opens. If I really need to, 3-pin, boom, door comes off. I got full 100 access with no restrictions to this water heater. That is why I had to do it this way. Yes, an hour-long video, but through my challenges and things I had to do, maybe it will help you if you have to build you a door, give you some things to think about, some steps to consider, maybe make it a little bit easier for you. And that's what it's all about. If I can help 1 or 2 people with this long video, boom, baby, that's a win for me. So this is done. Thank you so much for watching. Be blessed. Take back, check, build it for your sanity. This video has taken so long, literally a month of editing, coming back out here, redoing, reshooting, talking about something, trying to go through all that video, and then I missed some things, so I have to try to explain things to you. Very, very long video, but if I can help that one person, then I've done my job. And to me, that is more value then a couple 100,000 views. If I can help that one person out, that's what it's all about. I'm not here for me, I'm here for you. Thank you so much for watching again. We will see you next video.